Okie dokie. So, my name is Kristina Villa, and I am the co executive director of the Farmers Land Trust. And I am here with Jeff Poppen, the Barefoot Farmer, who is the owner and operator of the largest and oldest biodynamic farm in Tennessee, and who also has a new book out called Barefoot Biodynamics. Thank you so much for joining me today, Jeff. So fun to chat with you.
Yeah, nice to see you.
How are your potatoes looking?
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Got them all hilled up and they're laid by.
I thought for sure that you were going to say they're looking with their eyes. And do you have sweet potato slips for sale right now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a
So,
lot of them.
yeah. So if people want to buy sweet potato slips from you, they can order them and you'll ship them, right? Are you still doing that?
That's correct. Yeah, and we'll be at the Red Bowling Springs Farmers Market Saturday with them.
Cool. Cool. Well, cool. Well, we are here to talk about your new book and about your life and all the things going on. So your new book out that is called Barefoot Biodynamics is through Chelsea Green Publishing. Whoa, big deal. Very cool. Very proud of you. But you have several other books out, and I'm wondering if you could start by telling everyone what readers can expect to be different from and about this book versus the previous books that you've written.
Well, this book is more about the agriculture course Rudolf Steiner gave 100 years ago, and an effort to make that more understandable to the layperson. We have found this biodynamic method to be extremely valuable for market gardening in Tennessee. And my study of it, though, has been hampered by it's just really hard reading. I know you've tried to read it, and I know you've read it several times. We've read it together. It's just hard to understand a lot of that stuff. So I tried to simplify it. So that's what this book is about. My other books were simply more like little articles about certain things, certain aspects of the farm. Whereas this book, I tried to show the whole farm.
Okay. Well, very cool. So, in this book, you talk a lot about the land and okay, let me just say too, I loved reading the book. Like, I was so honored to get to read your book, and it is so beautiful. And definitely what you just described about how it makes Rudolf Steiner's biodynamic agriculture course like way easier to understand. Like, it was amazing how you're able to thread together personal stories and also make something that is a really complicated, thick, heavy thing to read, like so understandable. So it was like so wonderful to be able to read about how to do biodynamic agriculture in a more easy to understand, digestible way that's also like mixed with humor and fun. So really great. But what I love so much about this book too is that you talk a lot about the land, which you very clearly love, and which I think that we all love so much. And I can think of so many people who love that land specifically that you're talking about, but also land and nature and ecosystems and plants in general. And I wonder if you can share about more about your land. Like, how did you get your land? Like, how did you come into being on the land that you're on now?
Well, I got in trouble as a high school kid. Well, actually, I had dropped out of high school, and my brother had bought a farm in Tennessee in 1972 after having a few summers of communes on our father's farm in rural Indiana. And the reason we chose Tennessee was because Dad had gotten his doctorates here during the 40s. So my sister Cindy was born here in Nashville. But he got a better job offering in Northwestern near Chicago. So we all ended up, the rest of us are from up there that way. But we always lived on farms. And when I was 17 or so, everybody seemed to think it was a good idea that I moved down to Tennessee. Yeah.
But why Tennessee specifically? Just because like you already had family living there? Like what was it about Tennessee that like drew people here? I
Well,
mean, I think it's beautiful, but
there's many things. It's very beautiful, but I mean, it was beautiful in Illinois and Indiana. There's beauty everywhere. But when we were, you know, an adolescent, we would go to state parks because although it was uh, rural, it was very flat and a lot of corn and soybeans and wheat and things like that. And so we would go down to Brown County and places where they had cliffs and creeks and all this kind of stuff. And when I first visited John's farm here in Tennessee, I was just amazed. It looked like a state park.
yeah.
And I couldn't believe you could live in a state park, but it wasn't really the best, you know, farm. I mean, the farm that I moved from, which I could have stayed and farmed, was much better soil, perfectly flat, a little better climate, 80 miles from Chicago. So, you know, it would have been pretty easy to do something there too. But there was a few other factors. Land down here was about 5% as expensive as it was up near Chicago.
Yeah. And I
Uh,
think that's still true today. Like land in Tennessee is much cheaper than land around the country. And that's why this is one of the most moved to states in the country.
yeah, I'm not sure. After I moved here, land prices dropped in the Midwest during that farming crisis in the 70s. And land prices went up here, and for a while they were about even. So things change like that. I can't keep up with it, of course. And then the other thing that's so nice about it here, of course, is the climate. Chicago's really windy and cold, and that whole area up there. And so that was another reason. And then once I moved here, I just totally fell in love with the people and the old timiness. And a lot of people were still farming with horses, and everybody had a garden and orchards and animals and milk cows and cooked on wood stoves. Not everybody, but a lot of people still did. And it was just refreshing to break away from a society that had spawned things like the Vietnam War and all the racism and just the various evils that were going on. And we could live without electricity and running water and cooked on a wood stove for 25 years, and I didn't get so wrapped up into the culture. I still don't know much about American culture, actually.
So you didn't have electricity and you cooked on a wood stove for like how long?
25 years.
Wow. Holy moly. That's crazy. I just want to pause right here and say that for anyone watching and listening, if you want to drop some questions in the chat or I'm sorry, in the comment section, then we'd be happy to have Jeff Poppen answer them live. So feel free to put any questions in the comment section and we'll have him answer them. But just moving on. So you shared like the soils weren't as good here in Tennessee as where you were from, but land prices were cheaper and it was so beautiful and like you love the old timiness of it. And I'm just wondering, like, as a young and beginning farmer, and like as many people watching this probably are young and beginning farmers, like facing land access issues, like, did you have family help in acquiring the land that you're farming on now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh, my
Well,
I lived here for a few years, and our land we were had to pay a mortgage, so I was paying the mortgage. John had already used some of his inheritance to pay for half the land, and I eventually paid the other half of the land by uh, my dad. After a few years, he was going to send my younger brother to college, which he did, which at the time would have cost $8,000 for 4 years of college. And so he offered that to me if I would just, buy that half that land. So that's what I did.
yeah. Wow, that's so interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate it. So in your book too, in the Barefoot Biodynamics book that you um have out now, like, it's so wonderful in all the ways of like teaching how to do the biodynamic preparations and like what the ethos behind biodynamic agriculture is and really translating difficult language into easier to understand and like making it more practical for people. But you also talk about the community that you're a part of and the community that you love so much. And you can hear that in your words. Like you can feel how much you love and appreciate the community that you've built and that you've been part of, but that has like helped build you too. And I think that that is so beautiful, that reciprocal relationship that you seem to have with all of the people who come and support you and the farm and like how you support them too. You've talked about the festivals that you've had and the conferences and workshops on your farm. And you also talk about the apprentices that you've had over the years. And I wonder if you could share more about like how the apprentices and how your community has helped your farm.
Well, I wouldn't be here without them. Uh, yeah, so um, I did not start what I would call farming 50 years ago. I was an errant teenager running around the forests, enjoying myself, trying to grow a garden like my parents had done, and Debbie's parents had always had gardens. So we tried. It was not easy learning how to garden here because of the different soils were so old and lacking minerals and heavy clay and things of this nature. So um, I started asking other people with gardens. I'm a bit gregarious, and so I don't mind just stopping and talking to people if they're out in a garden. I had a little apple tree grafting nursery where I would find if I saw an apple tree with good apples on it, I would go knock on the door and ask them about it and hear stories. And I learned so much from the people that lived here about how to live here, which I had to learn. And that was a wonderful thing. And as a teenager, of course, I made friends with the local teenagers. They were some of them were pretty rough characters. Uh, this was kind of a wild place, and it behooved. Turned out to be very good that I made all these friends early on. It was probably good too that I didn't go to high school here because I probably got the crap beat out of me. They really didn't like, the hippies were sort of new around here. And so it took a little bit of people to get used to us. But as far as the elder people, a lot of their children were moving up north to get factory jobs and were leaving the farms. And very few of them wanted to live without electricity and cook on a wood stove and be self-sufficient gardeners. And so we got a lot of appreciation for that. And then fast forward 20 years and young people started wanting to stay with me, and I
Like
felt like
who?
like you. Yeah, and so it was a really a great time in the 90s. There was 80s and 90s. We had a lot of people just coming in and out. I didn't have a real strong feeling of that I owned the land. It's kind of the myth of property ownership is kind of crazy. So I was very open with if people wanted to come and stay, they were welcome to. Just don't bother me, and I was pretty easygoing about that, which was apparently rather rare. And so it became kind of a community hub. And well, if people pretty soon realize if you visit Jeff, he'll talk to you for really quite a while, maybe a half hour, an hour. But pretty soon he's going to put a hoe in your hand. We're going to go to the field, and we can talk while we do that. And so I have a bit of Tom Sawyer in me because farming really is fun.
But so the apprentices, so like since then, like it sounds like it started out as you like welcoming people to the land and like sharing land and space and knowledge with them. But then also it became and evolved since then. So like now you have interns and they help on the farm. They are like part of the labor force, but also they learn, like they get a full immersion of how to be a farmer, how to live like a farmer, like how to live with these values and principles that you've shared. I know I did. Like I wouldn't be where I am if it weren't for you. Thank you. But like, how has that evolved since this initial opening it up to the people? Like, where has that gone, and what benefits has it brought to you and others? And like, where are those people now?
Yeah, good question. Well, uh, we're actually counting them up. It's well over 100 folks. And, uh, despite my teachings, many of them did become farmers. But farming is not very lucrative. And so it takes a special person that's willing to live modestly and appreciate fresh in season food, but not want a whole lot of other things in their lives. So I think that there's a lot of lessons living on a farm besides just how to grow stuff or how to raise the animals. It has a lot to do with, how to take care of yourself and how to get by with little and make do and all that kind of stuff. So those are very important lessons for people. And so yeah, I would let the young people have their own gardens if they wanted to, or they certainly helped in our gardens. And at this time, during the 90s and early 2000s, our farm was in a sort of a growth stage. Gardens were getting bigger every year, and we went from a few acres in the 80s and 90s. Probably by 5 acres by 2000. And then, well, I don't know if you were here during the peak of it, but we got up to, close to 10 acres.
Jeff,
Uh,
I was the peak of it. Okay.
Well, of course.
Come
How
on.
could I forget? Well, yeah, we got up to a few hundred CSA members and had accounts and this thing. And then we started going the other direction slowly and having smaller amounts of crops. And during this time, yeah, we had a lot of interns. There could be 6, 8, 10 of them at a time. Uh, I didn't require a lot of them because they didn't really have a lot to offer. But it was the ones that helped the most were the ones that learned the most. And so, and they're the ones that got more of my attention. But in farming, there's this not a need for a lot of people all the time. There's need for a lot of people at harvest or planting or a specific time. And so farmers traditionally would let hobos stay on their land, and people would just be there on the land, back corner of it, and then they'd round them up when it was time to get the hay up or something, and they would help. And that's sort of how we approached it for years. By the time you came, I think it was 2013, we had tried to pare it down so it wasn't just like a free for all. And we tried to, be a little better at teaching and uh, answering questions and making sure everybody was getting what they needed that way. And now at the present time, we retired the CSA last year. Haven't had interns really. We just do the work ourselves. I have again, there's neighbors that come over and help. People I can call on to help me get a crop in or out and that kind of thing. But
So I just heard the word retiring in there, like you retired the CSA, which I'm just, leads me to my next question. So as an aging farmer, like where do you see yourself in 10 years, or where do you see yourself in 20 years? And I'm wondering like how is your land a part of that vision that you have for yourself?
yeah, well, it appears that the land and I are sort of inseparable, and we kind of forget if I'm the land or the land thinks it's me. We can't really tell the difference anymore. And so, yeah, I just plan to be here, and this farm will continue on. I have no doubt. There's, like you said, there's thousands of people that love it, and I can't imagine it will continue the way I've run it. I wouldn't expect anybody else to do it the way I do it. They'll do it the way they want to do it.
Well, okay. I love that so much that the land and I are inseparable. You said we forget. Like we forget if I'm the land or the land is me, like as if you guys are having a conversation. That's so cute. Okay. Um, so at this point, like where you are, you've had this entire life of like building soil, building infrastructure, building this farm, building markets, building community. You've done so much. Like you've had all these interns that go off now and like start their own farms all over the world, even. And I'm wondering, like, what do you think is the greatest accomplishment that you've had to this date? Like, is it your farm, or is it the people that you've touched, or is it something else, or what do you think?
I'm just learning how to open my heart. Just
Stop,
trying,
you're gonna make me cry.
well, learning how to be kind and not uh, opinionated and just be accepting and all those life lessons that you read about in the Bible or from Buddha or whatever. They're great lessons, but I read them early on, but they didn't. It wasn't until I lived them, and that my greatest accomplishment would be working on myself. And the farm has been a great help to that, and so has the community and the younger people here.
Aw, that's so beautiful. Well, so what do you think is the greatest legacy that you're leaving though? Like, is it your books? Like, you have this new book out that's like, I think after reading all of your books, like, I think this is the best book that you have out because it does encompass so much of your life and the story and really the building blocks of what has made this possible. And then, of course, like, to me, I think to a lot of people, you are the grandfather of biodynamics, like, especially here in the Southeast, and how it lays out, like how this new book that you have out through Chelsea Green Publishing like lays out so clearly the biodynamic approach, and like how Steiner had thoughts about what to do and how to regenerate and build soil. Like it's so great. But like, is that your greatest legacy, or do you think it was the apprentices that have now gone off and are farming just like you farm? Like, what do you think is your greatest legacy that you're leaving behind?
It could be the parties.
The festivals.
They will continue, and they mean a lot to a lot of people.
They do,
Yeah,
definitely.
and that's you know, it's an honor to have people come here and have these what they call spiritual experiences here.
That is surprising to me, though. Out of everything that you've done, you think that the festivals, like the three specifically, or is there like one of them that you think is like the greatest legacy?
Well, it would be the summer solstice one would be the one that most people would be familiar with, though we do have equinox events too.
And when is the next summer solstice event happening?
June 20th through 24th. Look
Fun,
forward to
exciting,
that. Yes. Got a lot of really nice bands lined up. We're going to have some demonstrations with, the glass blowing and tie dyeing and
cool.
food and the big bonfire, all that. And
And why do you think that like that is the greatest legacy? Like, is it because it gives? I mean, I guess I would share that what I see that is such a positive about it is that the festivals are an opening to the general public who are so disconnected from land and food to be able to have a gateway into connection to farm, food, community in a way that we have been so deprived of. Is that like, is that what you
yeah,
think?
exactly. Yeah, you know well that you were affected by them too. And it's an opportunity for people to build community simply because I obviously can't do it myself and I'm not a festival organizer. So I rely on a whole lot of friends to pull this off. A dozen people get together and work for several days to make a big bonfire. Other people help with spreading the words. Bands play for very reasonable fees because they love it out here. People want to see this farm continue. They want to see these parties continue. They they really, like you say, they get this nature experience and they look upon it as their place. They come here, they come to the same campsite every year. It's their, and
Yeah,
also the feeling of community and love and sharing uh is it's hard to find that.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can tell that's a large part of your life and the book too, because it is featured on the cover. Like the big bonfire and the festival is like right smack dab on the cover of this book, which I think is so great and beautiful. So
Well,
like 25 years, like because you know, you just recently said the land and I are inseparable, and we forget like which one is which. Like in 25 years, what do you think the land will remember?
that I wouldn't know. Uh,
Surely the the pitter patter of little feet, giggles, and festival happenings and garden hoeings and
and also just the things that I don't do too. We don't use any chemicals here. We don't log the forests. You know, there's a lot of kindness and love here. And I don't know if you made the sign, but somebody put a sign up one time, leave your troubles at the gate. And, that was just so sweet because people do come here, and I've seen people that have animosities towards each other, sitting down with each other and talking because they're
yeah,
here. Uh,
yeah.
and so I think that's a wonderful thing.
That is very sweet. That is very sweet. I, for some reason, like when I asked that question, what I remembered and immediately, of course, many, many years of memories, but like one that just stood out when I just asked that question specifically was all of the cows getting into the sweet potato field during sweet potato harvest and you standing there like pulling your hair out, like freaking out because all the cows were in the sweet potatoes. And oh, how funny I thought it was. Oh,
I probably was not laughing.
I know. I hope the land remembers that.
Yeah, well, there's been lots of occasions like that. One time, the Sunday morning, we were all recovering from the big party, and my neighbor drove the herd of cattle through the party. They had gotten out, and he said, "Jeff, now I've heard of this before, but I've never actually seen people party until the cows come home." And there
That's
they all
hilarious. That is funny.
they wanted to come to the party too, I guess.
Of course. Yeah. Why wouldn't they? Of course. So obviously in your book, the Barefoot Biodynamic book, there is a lot of maybe not necessarily advice, like you're not like giving advice. It really feels like you're just like sharing your heart and your wisdom and your knowledge and your experiences. But like right now, do you have any sage advice for people watching, like specifically beginning farmers?
Well, yeah, uh, good luck. Uh, it's not easy. Our society is not really set up to support small farmers. You should know that at the very beginning. Um, Learning how to till the soil and keep it fertile. It took me a long, long time, and I received advice from my elders, but I didn't take it.
Mm,
I had to plow too wet and
mm,
use a disc and do things wrong. Uh, didn't lime for several years, and it was through these mistakes that I learned. It's really hard to learn something that requires the skill set that farming does out of a book. It's the experience of day-to-day living on a farm that really taught me. And I would say that uh, the important thing isn't to get land. The important thing is to learn how to tend the land.
that's beautiful. Yeah, that's really beautiful. I am thinking about how there's a term I often use, which is careful tillage, and I know I got that from you, like how careful you are to not till when the ground is too wet or even when it's too dry for like wind erosion and really it's like care for the soil is I think what you're talking about, like how to really care for the soil, and that is how nutritious, wholesome, nourishing food comes out and is available for people.
Right. I know you've seen me get frustrated when a bunch of people walk through the garden and I call them a herd of elephants.
I was like, you mean the cows? You mean the people you call the cows?
Well, it's just when the word garden is confusing because it implies a place to walk in the garden. But we never allow walking in our gardens. It tramples all my little microbes that I preciously care for. And so we try to have garden paths, and between the rows that you walk on, but you don't step right next to the plants because that would compact the soil and interfere with the capillary moisture. That's how we water our plants. And it would just a lot of things are just really ingrained in me because of my love for the land, that it's hard to teach. I mean, you learned the term careful tillage, but I'm sure at some point or another you and Anthony tilled uncarefully and
I would never.
suffer the consequences. That's how you learn.
Yeah, definitely. You also said something else though that it just really inspired me too about how you don't learn these things from a book. Like, of course you learn from books, but the experience of when to till, when not to till, like what the soil feels like what that wet air smells like all of these things are so experiential. And I feel like that's not just true about the actual farming that happens at your farm, but also the lifestyle that happens and really learning how to eat and live outside of the capitalistic consumerism that is the modern day grocery store and the food paradigm that we all live in is like really like that sort of thing that I have learned from you is not something I feel like I could have learned in a book. It was like
Mhm.
experiential. I'm really
Yeah,
grateful for
I
that.
remember the first spring after you'd been there for a year and you were the summer before you weren't interested in canning. But the spring, you realized that we lived on canned food, and you really took to canning right away that next year,
Yeah.
and put
Yeah.
food by. So, yeah, I made a conscious decision that I wanted to be nourished from my own farm, and that happened 50 years ago, and so that means not eating things out of season. I don't go to the grocery stores. Try not to get uh, food from places like restaurants or places like that. And we just try to figure out what we can grow here and how we can live on it. And that's was really important to me.
I love that. I love that so much. And I really think that so many other people want to be there too. And like that's the future that they want for themselves. But it is so hard when that's not how you're raised or that's not what the status quo typical way of being is. And so, yeah, it's just really it's so old, but it's so revolutionary and radical too. Like to live like that. It's so great. Thank you. So, so yeah, we've talked about your farm. We've talked about like the events that you have on your farm and like how careful you are with your soil and your microbes and caring for the meadows and the forests and the creeks and the trees and the gardens and the cows. But like you've done work outside of your farm too. Like you have catalyzed a movement here, specifically in Tennessee, but all around the country. Like you have been the catalyst for a local food movement. And I wonder, like, as you look at your work in the Middle Tennessee food system, like, what brings you hope now?
Oh, well, I've that young people are showing an interest in raising their own food. Very hopeful. Uh, the inevitable crash of the present agricultural system is scary, but also has grains of hope in it. Uh, yeah, hope comes from young people uh, and the dreams that they have. I want to support that as much as I can, and I felt that it was uh, at one point in my career was that I wanted it to be easier for the next generation to make a living like I did on a piece of land. And so raising awareness about local food seemed like the best way to help.
So great. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for all you've done for the land, our community, the larger movement. So grateful and really inspired by your newest book. Do you want to just really quick tell everyone what the book is called and where they can get it?
Barefoot Biodynamics. And the t subtitle they chose was How Cows Community or Compost and Community Helps Us Understand Rudolf Steiner's Agricultural Course. Um, I don't know where they get it. I'm sure you can get it on the internet. You can come visit me and I'll go in my closet and get you a book. Uh, yeah, Chelsea Green Publishing is the name of the publisher, so they probably have a few copies around.
Yeah. So if you are interested in getting Jeff's newest book that is very beautiful and inspiring, you can go to Chelsea Green Publishing. Their website has this book available for sale. And thank you so much, Jeff. I so appreciate this. This has been so great.
It's so good to see you again.